Dear brothers, today is July 29, Saturday, July 29, 2017. I want to share a dream that I had at dawn today. I was in a place with my family and other brothers. It was the top of a mountain. There were 3 stadiums, and these stadiums were linked as by bridges that we could pass from one side to the other. It was Saturday in my understanding because in that different places, in that different stadiums, this, which were 3, Saturday activities such as Sabbath school, divine worship, and others were taking place, so I could appreciate that it was a Saturday. In the first stadium, they were giving Sabbath school. There was a lot of controversy for different ideas imposed by those in the hierarchy and other people who debated. So as we saw that demonstration in that place, we did not like it. So we began to walk along one of the bridges, my family and other brothers who were with us, and we went to the stadium, to the second stadium. There we began to see that there were young people and young adults. So when we stayed a moment to see what was taking place there, we began to listen to strident music. The lyrics spoke of God, but the music was total and absolutely mundane. So we said, we can't stay here. So we went out the door and walked to the next bridge to get to the third stadium. There we saw a person who was preaching. When I realized, I saw that he was a pastor. He was preaching. He was speaking as incoherent things like, we're fine, God is with us, we are in victory, things like that. And I said, but how can he be saying that if we have left the 2 previous stages and look at what we saw and look at what he is preaching? Then, suddenly, while I was saying this to the people who were with us, the clothes of that pastor who was preaching fell off and he was left in his underwear. And we ran out of there and quickly looked for the exit. And as this was like on the hill, on top, we began to go down. Then, when we went down the mountain, we saw a boat. And we asked the captain to please take us to the other side of the river because we no longer wanted to be there in that place. So he told us, sure, but hurry up. Because whenever people come down from those stadiums, some soldiers follow them. And if they catch them, they don't come back. And hurry up because there they come. Soon, when he said so, he pointed to the mountain above where we had come down from. And there we saw 3 soldiers coming after us. So we ran to the boat and it began to turn to retreat from the shore. When we saw the soldiers jumped into the water and they began to swim strongly towards the boat. And I saw when they boarded it. Then we began to fill ourselves with fear. I was very afraid and we looked for a place to hide. And I went behind a table that was there in the boat. And when I bent down, I saw one of these soldiers. I saw how one of them entered the captain's cabin and took command, and another was going to where I was. So I was very scared, but suddenly I realized that behind me there was something that was breathing. I felt a breath very close to me, on my back. So when I turn around, I see a lion, an adult lion. It was beautiful. He was sitting. Then his eyes stared at me fixedly, and I also stared into his eyes fixedly. But his eyes weren't like animal eyes. They were like human eyes. And he was looking at me with tenderness. So at first I was scared when I saw him because of the impression. But then when I saw his eyes that emanated tenderness, I began to feel peace. Then the lion got up and fell on the soldier who was coming towards me. He threw him to the ground and he stopped moving. I didn't see him move anymore. Then I saw how this lion also passed towards the control cabin and attacked the soldier who had turned the ship and passed the command to the captain who they had taken out of that place. So then he went where the other group that was scared because they were there instigating by another soldier. He attacked this soldier, and so we could continue safely to the other side of the river. So when I looked there in that place, I saw how we were able to get to the other side of the river. And when we got there, on the other side of the river, they kindly said goodbye to us and told us, keep going down that road and don't get off it. So we kept going up, and so we did. We started going up. Suddenly, I turned back and say, let me see where the boat is going. So when I look back to see the boat, I see the lion coming behind us. So I kind of got desperate and told my family and the brothers who came with us, we must go back. The lion came with us. He is from the boat. They will think that we are taking him. Let us return him. But then while I was talking about that to the people who were with me, suddenly a person in front of us started to greet us and said, hello, welcome, come, come. Then we saw some groups of people there in that place. When they welcomed us, some were just sitting on the ground, but they were crying. Some were even alone in some corners, sitting there, and they were crying very hard, crying without stopping. And although they had their hands on their faces, I saw how their tears fell down on the ground. So I asked the person who greeted us, who welcomed us, why were they crying? Then he answered me, they know they must be here, but having left everything is very hard for them. This is phase 1. It's the most difficult phase. Then I saw in that place fields ready to plow, but nobody did it because everyone was suffering. Everyone was crying. Besides that, in that beautiful place, I saw some small huts, but no one in them, because they were all outside and they were crying with this pain. And when I looked in that place, I saw signs in different places that said, Station number 1. Then when we got to the man who received us, I told him, the lion came with us and he belongs to the ship. So I want to return him. We have to return to take him to the ship. But the man smiled at me and told me, the lion always accompanies those from Station 4. Whenever we see the lion going down with people or someone who goes down and goes to Station 4, well, the lion goes with them. So I asked him, what is that about Station 4? And he told me, come and see. Then he took me to the tour of the station where we were, Station number 1. Then, when I saw everything that was in that station, I could realize that it was a place that was very beautiful, a very quiet place. But the people, even though the place was quiet, they were crying. But he told us, don't worry, you have to go your way. Then he gave us water to drink and showed us the way we had to follow. And we said goodbye and went up the road. So while we were leaving that place, I could hear someone who said, look, the lion is with them. They are from Station 4. So, for some reason, everyone there knew what the lion symbolized except us. So we continued on our way, and soon another character began to greet us. Next to him, there was a sign that said, Station number 2. I could appreciate it at that time, and we arrived, and he very kindly proceeded to show us the area of that camp. Very kindly he took us on a tour of the place, and then we began to see that there were things that I had not been able to appreciate in the previous camp. I saw the little cabins again. They were the same, and we saw the field. It was plowed. It was very different from the previous field, and people were sowing. They were already calmer, but they looked a bit worried. So everyone was astonished when they saw the lion with us, and the guide told me they are already acclimating and will soon be happy. So after this, they gave us water again and took us to continue the journey. He said goodbye to us, and we continued up the road. Each time the road was narrower and higher, and we were near the next station. And when we were near the next station, another gentleman also came out to meet us. Very kindly, the gentleman took us on a tour of that place, just as they did in the previous station. So I went by the sign again that said this time station number 3. There were the same cabins, the same fields, but I noticed that now the people there who were planting were happy, and they showed us they themselves little plants that they themselves had cultivated and they had grown, and that they were in the process of continuing to sow. Then they began to tell us how they sowed, to explain how they did it. I saw that there was peace and security on their faces, and they were all very hard-working. So our guide told us to come and see the cabins. This time we went to see the cabins, but this time we saw them, not only from afar, but I was able to enter them. And when we entered, I saw that inside the door, at the entrance, there was a glass pitcher and a clay pitcher. They were full of water, and inside the cabins, I saw a mattress made of cloth that was like rolled up, which the guide told us that at night it was unrolled so that people could sleep, and during the day they rolled them up again, and they stayed rolled up. I also saw a small table, and there were 3 books there. So I went quickly to see them, and I could see that they were the Bible, the Spirit of Prophecy, and the old hymnal, and I was happy, and I picked to see them. I was also able to notice that there was a tray with bread at one end of the hut, and when we left the hut, when we were taken, I could see that each hut next to it has 3 stones, simulating like a fire pit, and a small pile of firewood. So the cabins were small, and with only that, which was the only thing they had apart from the crops. They looked happy. So I asked the character who was guiding us, what did they eat every day? And he told me, soon you will know. Then he directed us to the road and told us to continue because our day was going to end soon, because next station was ours. So he said goodbye to us joyfully, and so we continued on our way. So we arrived a bit tired because each time the slope was narrower and the climb more difficult, and they received us as before. And I could also see their beloved brothers, a sign that said station number 4. Both the one who received us and the others who were there showed that they were happy to see us and quickly took us to the cabins that we had to occupy by families, because each family had their own cabin. Then, when I entered the cabin that my family and I had, I saw the same things as in the previous stations. There were only slight variations. There was only a large clay jug at the entrance and a small clay jug The large pitcher was full of water, but the small one was empty. Then, when seeing this, our guide in that camp, he gave us some instructions. And he told us, "Be very attentive. Take this bag of seeds, and every morning you must sow on that side of the field." And he pointed out to us the place that was assigned by families. Then he told us that each one had his planting already stipulated, and that according to how they worked and sowed, they were going to reap. Then he continued telling us that we must remember that every day we had to eat what we sowed, and that if we did not sow, then we would not have to eat. So I remembered at that moment when he said that of the bread table that I saw in the previous station. But when I looked around there, I didn't see it. I couldn't appreciate it. But when I finished looking to see if I could see the bread table, the guide continued telling us, every morning, families make their family worship in their huts, and then they go out to the field. But in the evening, they all gather in that place, and he pointed out to us. And when he pointed out the place, I saw a plain. It was made of dirt and grass, and the seats were logs, tree trunks that had been cut down and were in that place. Then he told us that it was on those logs that we sat for the evening worship of thanksgiving to God. That's where we would meet. So, when I went out and walked around the camp a bit, I could see another variant. The cabins were much further apart than in the previous station. They were no longer so close together. So night came. All the families went to that place where he had told us that we were going to meet to have the evening service, the Thanksgiving service. And I could see there in that place that they prayed, that the word of God was read, the spirit of prophecy, hymns were sung, and large parts of the Psalms and other parts of the Bible were recited from memory. Then each of us thanked God for the care and provision of each day. And before finishing all this and praying for each one to go to their cabins, a man stood up and said to us, "Brothers, remember the sign. When you see it, let's get ready." Then I asked in amazement, "What sign? What sign? What are you talking about? I do not know." So there at that time, they told me that when we saw lights coming down from the sky to the plains, we should get ready to go out. So I stayed with that, thinking about it. But we went to sleep. Then I was meditating. What could that be? What were those words? What do they mean? Then, well, nothing. I fell asleep. And early the next day, after family worship, we went out to sow and saw in our fields that there were spikelets with seeds, and we were happy, and we began to eat. And we said, "Who would have planted this?" If yesterday when they showed us the place there was nothing planted, but thank you, Lord. We were there grateful, gleaning the seeds and eating. So we also went to the river in search of water in the small pitcher, and we also planted a part of the parcel that had been assigned to us. So I thought, what I am sowing now is going to take a long time to germinate. But for some reason, the peace and harmony and happiness were so much in that place that I stopped worrying. So the day ended with evening worship and again listening to the signal, and we went to bed. So we got up the next day, and after worship, when we went out to the field, we saw there that everything sown the day before already had fruits, and so we sowed every day the day before, and that which we sowed was the next day's food. And we were so amazed and so happy at what God was doing for us day after day in that place. There I could see that there was no room for idleness. We all worked all day, and only in the afternoon for worship we meet to praise and glorify the name of God. So we went to sleep, and when it was late, some characters dressed in white appeared at the door of each cabin, and they told us, "The hour has come, get ready." Then we all went out, and I could see when I left the cabin that others were coming out as well, and we were going up the mountain in a row, and they told us, "It's time." So I asked, "It is the time for what?" "Camp 5 is waiting for you." So I said, "But how? Everything we have sown and everything will be stayed here. What is going to happen?" But they all followed that path, so I started to follow it too. We were taken all night. We almost arrived at dawn at Camp 5 when I could see the sign that said Camp 5, and there I could see another variant. There, the cabins were even smaller, and they were even much further, one from each other, to the point that if we didn't look for them, we wouldn't see the neighbor's cabin. So there on the first day, we were provided with food, but from the second day onwards, everything was very similar to Camp 4. Only for a few variations. The water was further away. The planting field was harder, more hostile. It did not grow as much as in the one before. The land was more difficult, and we had to work more for our daily food. So this led us to pray more and seek more of God because that place was more difficult. Thus the days and nights passed. When one night, after worship and going to our huts, we saw the lights of the sky coming down to the plains, then we immediately heard a voice, "It's time, get out. It's time, get out." For some reason, we already knew what to do. So we all ran down the mountain and went to the plains. We saw many people there and began loudly to proclaim the last warning message to this world very bluntly. Some listened and came to the group and began to proclaim the same message as we did, but most looked at us and became angry. Then soon we heard a voice that said very loud, "Enough, get out." Then we all ran back to the mountain. Now the group was bigger, as those who heard and accepted the last message joined in, and we all ran with force. When suddenly I was able to look behind me, to see, according to me, to look at all those who came behind me, also running in the same direction from our group. But when I looked, what I realized was that I saw men who were enraged, and they were following us up the mountain. Then I saw them very close to us, and I said, "Lord, please help us, because they are going to catch us. This mountain is very difficult to climb, and I already feel that I have no strength." Then suddenly, when we were there in that place, then we saw how the mountain began to light up. The mountain began to have lights in different places. So when I looked to see good at those lights, I began to see that they were angels. Then many of these angels ran past us down the mountain and attacked these people who came to harm us. But others were directing us up the mountain to places where only they knew where they were going. So we continued climbing with those who were directing us, and soon we reached to certain places very steep, very difficult to reach. But we arrived like some caves. So I could see that in the different mountains around where I was, there were different caves. Then in the groups, they would enter us there. And when they entered us there, well, we felt safe, a little tired, a little agitated, but safe, because two angels stood in front of the door of the caves. And there we felt that nothing and no one could get there to harm us. Suddenly, while we were there, when we felt safe there, in the middle of the night, there was a roar and a very bright and very strong light. Then I ran to the door of the cave and asked one of the angels, "He is coming, right? Is Jesus who is coming?" Then he answered me, "Yes, yes. Our King of Kings and Lord of Lords is coming." Then I began to cry. I knew that everything was over. No more pain, no more death, no more persecution. We were already there, sealed and guarded by our great God and his marvelous kingdom. Then I felt so happy, so happy. We all started crying there. We felt our hearts coming out. We all looked at each other when the angel said they had to go. So we said to them, but how? How is it you are leaving? Then they told us, yes, we have to go. We have to go to be part of the angelical choir. We have to be there when Jesus comes. He is coming, and we have to be part of that angelical choir. But we see each other right now. Don't you all worry. We'll see you right now. Then they smiled at us and said, peace, it's all over. We were so happy, beloved brothers. We saw when they went to heaven to be part of the great choir that could be heard and seen in the clouds. This so marvelous. We were all happy and we knelt and praised the one who lives forever and ever at that moment while we were there in that adoration, in that very solemn moment, seeing that our God was already coming in the clouds of the heavens and that everything was going to end now. All the suffering, all the crying, all the pain. I heard a voice that said to all of us, going shortly, going shortly. So when I heard that, I said, going shortly, what does this mean? And I heard a voice again, even louder and more clearly. And the voice said to me, tell them that everything is ready, to get ready, because I'll be back very soon. At that moment, beloved, I woke up with a joy and the blessed hope of salvation, and with a burning desire in my heart that each and every one of us can be part of this marvelous salvation. God help us all to get there. God help us all to go through the process that God wants each of us to go through so that we can perfect this character to meet Jesus Christ in the clouds of heaven. May God bless you all.